Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Thomas III, the editor of the Christopher Recorder, and we are here in 2021. Yes, we survived 2020 with the new edition of TCR Dialogue. As you can see, we are still celebrating the victory of my Morehouse brother, Ralph Warnock in Georgia. And to kick off our year of dialogue, we have with us Mr. Antoine Seawright interviewing Jaime Harrison, the former U.S. Senate candidate of South Carolina, who came this close to getting rid of our beloved friend Lindsey Graham. We are excited to have you both here today. Jaime, you've done great work for us, and Antoine, we're excited to have you interview him. Two great South Carolinians, two of my favorite people. Take it away, Antoine. Thank you again, Mr. Harrison, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, John Thomas, and thank you to the Christian Recorder for allowing me to be back in another year. In the normal AME church service, we say this is the day that the Lord has made, but I'm thankful this is the year that the Lord has given us, and we shall rejoice. Let me start by acknowledging this well-established protocol of the African Methodist Episcopal Church from the top to the parking lot. Let me say thank you to all that you do, and special recognition of my home bishop of the 7th Episcopal District, Bishop Samuel Green and Supervisor Green. Thank you, and thank you for your friendship and your kindness always. And a special shout out to the 9th Episcopal District, where my uncle, Bishop Harry L. Seawright, the 133rd elected consecrated bishop, and my aunt, Supervisor Seawright, served. I'm so thankful for my uncle's continued prayers and continued support of all of my endeavors. And to all of you, I said last year, if it is to be, it will be because of the AMEs. And by golly, it was the AME Church, the collective Black church, but a real strong effort from the AME Church to help usher across history and giving us President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. And 7 days from today, they will be sworn in as the next leaders of the free world, and I'm so excited. And if you fast forward the tape past November 3rd, it was my friend Bishop Jackson and everyone in the state of Georgia to help usher across the first Black man from Georgia to serve in the United States Senate, the youngest person and the first Jewish man to serve in the United States Senate with Senator-elect Ossoff and Senator-elect Reverend Warnock. And we're just so thankful for the work and the groundwork and the continued work of the AME Church. Today is such a historic day, and let me say happy Founders Day to the devastating divas of Delta Sigma Theta. I texted with your former national president, Marsha Fudge, early, and I told her I was having a conversation with Jaime here, and she told me to make sure I rep her set. So I have on my Delta tie to make certain of that, and certainly to the new leader of the Congressional Black Caucus as they celebrate 50 years this year. The other Congresswoman from Ohio, Joyce Beatty, who's a dear friend and a dear friend of the AME Church. We're just so thankful for the continued leadership of those who are serving in the Congress, but particularly those ladies of Delta Sigma Theta on this historic Wednesday, where the House is likely to impeach President Donald Trump for the second time. I thought it'd be fitting to have perhaps one of the most consequential candidates for public office of my day to join me for this conversation. Certainly, Jaime Harris is no stranger to the AME Church. He's no stranger to politics, and he's no stranger to anyone who may be catching our dialogue here at 4 o'clock on a Wednesday. I oftentimes, when I get the opportunity to present Jaime, I tell people this story because it's so personal to me. I remember in 2009, I was a young man at a public relations firm in South Carolina, Sunrise Communications. I was just starting out and trying to find my way. And so I borrowed money. I found Jaime's email on the internet. He was working at a group at the time in Washington, D.C. I borrowed money to get a flight to D.C., stayed at my uncle and my aunt's house for several days, figured out very quickly how to use the metro to get into the city from Fort Washington, Maryland, every day to show up at Jaime's office to shadow him for a week. There was not a person on Capitol Hill or any meeting or anyone we bumped into that did not have incredible transformational things to say about Jaime Harrison. It was because of that visit I landed my first client as a public relations professional. Fast forward the tape a few years later, Jaime Harrison made certain that I was a student at the Congressional Black Caucus Institute boot camp, where I learned some of the more transformational skills of my career. It was in that setting I met the Benny Thompson, the Maxine Waters, the late John Lewis, the late Elijah Cummings, and that all of that changed my life. And I remember very vividly when I got on the metro to go back to get my bags to go to the airport. I remember I sent Jamie a text thanking him. And I still have this message in my phone for some reason. But he said, make certain that your deposits outweigh your withdrawals and everything you do in this business. And I'll never forget that. And that's why there's nothing in the world Jaime Harrison will ever set out to do that he will not have a friend and ally in me and my family. And so, Jamie, uh, we know all the things you've done, all the history breaking things you've done, from being the first of so many things on Capitol Hill, the first African American party chair here in South Carolina, being a right hand to my friend and mentor, Jim Clyburn, but also being a transformational figure in our party. I thank you so much for what you've done for me, but most important, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Antoine, and thank you for being a blessing to so many, man. We are all proud of you and all proud of your success and your continued success. You are a bright star, not only in the Democratic Party, you're a bright star in this nation. And you know, the sky is the limit. And I appreciate you and your friendship and just being such a good brother. You know, first and foremost, giving honor to God, who is the light of all of our lives. Um, you know, it is such a tremendous blessing to be on here with you, to be on the Christian Recorder. I also want to, you've established a protocol. I want to give my thanks to our bishop here in South Carolina, Bishop Samuel Green, who has become like a friend, not like a friend, he is a friend, but he also is a mentor and is one of the strongest people that I have ever met. And I'm so glad to learn from him, to have him in my corner. He's just a tremendous force of good in this world when we need so much more good in our society and in our relationships in our communities. And so you know, so many heroes and heroines in the AME church. I grew up Baptist, and but I can tell you, with my interactions with AME, y'all make me want to change teams sometimes. It's just such a great family network. It's such a powerful network of folks who know who they are and know what they're fighting for, and for that, I am always so grateful.
You know, as always, for those who are watching, please comment in the comment section with your church, your Episcopal district, and any other things you want to add to our conversation, our dialogue. Trust me when I tell you, we read it, we note it. It's so important. Jamie, I'm going to dive right into our conversation. I said to a reporter yesterday from Politico, she said, how would you describe what Jaime Harrison has accomplished? And I said, Jamie, life story is two things. One, when people have counted him out, he always comes around to teach them that they do not know how to count. Secondly, I said I think his career could be summarized as someone who had a decision to make. Two roads diverge in the wood. Jaime Harrison took the road less traveled by, and it has made all of the difference. We've heard peeps and flirtations of your story, but walk us through the Sunday school version of how you got to where you are, from a little roundhead boy in Orangeburg to being perhaps one of the most powerful figures in Democratic politics.
Oh man, I am blessed and highly favored. You know, I grew up the son of a teen mom. My mom was 16 years old when she had me, and I was raised by my grandparents. My grandma often said that when my mom brought me home, she said, "Give me that boy," and I stayed with him for most of my life. You know, I was raised by my grandparents. My grandma had an 8th grade education. My grandfather had a 4th grade education. He did construction. She started out picking cotton and working in textile mills. And despite the fact, Antoine, that they didn't have a whole lot of money, didn't have a whole lot of education, they were rich in terms of the values that they had. And they instilled those values in me. They taught me the value of helping other people and working as hard as I possibly could. And those are the things that still drive me to this very day. And so I was the first in my family to go to college. I went to Yale University, then Georgetown Law School. I met Congressman Clyburn when I was a junior in high school, and he calls me a bad penny because he hadn't been able to get rid of me ever since. Uh, he uh, he gave me an internship in his office, and then he gave me a job on Capitol Hill, where I became the first and youngest person to be the first Black executive director of the House Dem Caucus, first Black floor director in the Whips operation. And then I went on to becoming the chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party, running for the Senate and associate chair of the DNC. You know, I've lived a beautiful and very blessed and fortunate life. And what is incumbent upon me is, because I've been so blessed, I need to make sure that I pass those blessings on to others as well. And so that's been my driving force. It has been trying to do everything I possibly can to make sure that the other young people who are coming up get the opportunity to be the best that they can be.
Jamie, you and I have worked together for some time now, and we know the Black church is still the nerve center of our community. It has, continues to be, and likely will be going forward. Uh, from your perspective, as someone who's worked in democratic politics at the highest levels, talk about the importance of the Black church and making sure the Black church is not just engaged 30 days out from an election, but making sure there's ongoing engagement from an accountability standpoint, but also from a preparing for the next election cycle standpoint and a government standpoint.
Well, you know, Antoine, in order to understand the power of the Black church is just to understand the power of the Black vote. The Black vote in this country is crucial, particularly in Democratic Party politics. You know, Barack Obama would not have been president without the Black vote. Joe Biden would not have become president without the Black vote. Well, the heart of the Black community is the Black church. And so, you know, you got the body. Well, the heart of that body, the thing that pumps the blood, the thing that gets the oxygen into the blood, that is the Black church. And so it's so important that we engage, that we interact, like you said, that we don't take for granted the Black church. It's not about popping in to, you know, to give greetings a month or two before the election. It's about making sure that you maintain those relationships, that you are working in conjunction with the leaders in the church in order to do the things that need to be done to help the people in the community. You know, one of the things that we had on our campaign was a program called Harrison Helps, which is our service initiative. And in essence, Harrison Helps was doing the things that Black churches do all the time, which is go into communities, identify the issues that people are dealing with, and helping them deal with those things. That's crucial and that's important. And it's important that we do those things as candidates for office in partnerships with the churches that are always there, that are, you know, are never forgotten, because they are the backbone and the safety net. When folks can't count on the government to help them, they can always turn to their church. They can always turn to their church families. And we got to do all that we can to be supportive, particularly in these days of COVID, where folks can't get together in person like we normally do. And so I think for those of us involved in politics, we need to understand the power of the church, but do all that we can to be supportive of the church, particularly as we go through these hard times.
Jamie, you were a first-time candidate this past election cycle. I remember in January, February of 2019, maybe, when you were flirting with the idea, people wrote off your candidacy, as they do with so many African-American candidates, particularly in the South. Talk about that experience from your perspective, one, being a Black candidate, two, being from the South, three, being one of those persons where people thought you was just another person running for office and it really do not matter, and you end up closing the gap with a historic run in so many ways. And then four, talk about after your race, you went on to make sure there's continued effort to build on what you started in the campaign and with your political action committee.
Yeah. You know, Antoine, one of the greatest barriers that I had in this campaign was not just Lindsey Graham. It was about the fact that people had lost all sense of hope. You know, here in South Carolina, our state motto is "While I breathe, I hope." And my goal during this campaign was to go into communities where people felt as though they were not seen or heard or that anybody was fighting for them. And those communities were devoid of any sense of hope. And so I saw it as my task as a candidate running for office to go in and give those folks hope that things can be better and will get better. But we just need the right type of leadership in order to do that. Now, we weren't able to get across that finish line. But what we were able to do, Antoine, is we change and have fundamentally changed the dynamics here in South Carolina. You know, the most that a Democrat had ever gotten in South Carolina was 860 some odd thousand votes. And that was Barack Obama back in 2008. We were able to get 1.1 million people to vote for us. We came a little short, but that was a historic gap. And it shows that we are making progress. But we can't just stop. You know, the one thing I told my son after we got after this race, he was I have a 6-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. My 6-year-old was so excited for the campaign, but he was so sad when we didn't win. And I told him, I said, son, sometimes we take you out to go ride your bike. And he said, yeah, Daddy. I said, sometimes you fall off that bike, right? And he said, yeah, Daddy. And I said, well, what did I tell you to do when you fall off the bike? He said, you tell me to get back on, brush myself off and get back on. And I said, buddy, that's what we have to do in life. Sometimes we get hard times. Sometimes we run up against roadblocks, but we don't give up. Brush ourselves off and we get back on because we are determined to ride this bike. I'm determined to bring hope back to South Carolina. I wasn't able to help do it the first time around. We inspired a lot of people, but we still got some more people that we need to inspire, that we need to get them to the polls so that they can get the right type of leadership that is worthy of them and their families. We need to make sure that the people who are leading us see us, that they hear us, and that they're going to fight for us. And so the way that I brushed myself off and got back on the bike was to start this pack behind me, Dirt Road Pack. Because we need to invest in communities that have those dirt roads because we can't give up on them. They need to know that there's some folks fighting for them and going to work hard for them. There are people right now who live in communities with no health care, with no hospitals because their hospitals are closed, where they don't have any broadband and they can't connect to the internet, where their infrastructure is falling apart. Their schools are underserved and under-resourced. Those communities need some people who will fight for them. They have the AME Church because we know that all of you all in the AME family continuously fights for them. But let's have a good partner in Washington, D.C. and in these state legislatures that are doing the same thing. Dirt Road PAC is focusing on just that, making sure that we're fighting for them. And actually, I see the web address on there is actually JAIME Harrison.com, JaimeHarrison.com. Come on, we need your help to focus on rebuilding these communities for so many people.
Jaime, when you do a political autopsy of the 2020 election cycle, you learn so much about what happened. One of the things we know is that Black men, which you and I talk about privately and publicly, the most consequential voting bloc in a generation, perhaps did not perform as strong as we wanted them to in this election. How do we fix that going forward to make certain that we engage, persuade, and turn out Black men? Not just turn them out, but turn them out for people who we know have their best interests at heart.
Yeah. Well, we know the gold standard in voting, Antoine, is African-American women, and we don't take that for granted. They have, if anybody's been there, they've been the backbone of voting in this country for a long time now. And Black men have also been played that role, but as of late, we've seen some slippage. We need to make sure that we are engaging with Black men and Latino voters so they understand the importance of voting. If anybody doesn't believe that their vote count, just look at what happened in Georgia just recently. As a result of folks turning out to vote, Georgia was able to make history, sending an African American man and a Jewish man. We know the history of African Americans and Jews working together during the civil rights movement, risking life and limb in order to bring civil rights and equal rights to the African American community. Well, that partnership was forged once again in Georgia. And now those two men will go to Washington, D.C. to work and fight for the least of these. That is the power of what your vote means, because some people don't believe that and have tried and do everything in their power to take away that vote from particularly African Americans. And you have to question, why do they fight so hard to take away that vote? It is because they understand how powerful it is. So if others are trying to take away our vote, we shouldn't do it ourselves. It's incumbent upon African American men in particular, and I'm speaking to the brothers right now. If you don't vote for yourself, vote for the people who you love. Vote for the people who are important to you. When I go and vote, I think about my mom. I think about my grandma who's on Social Security and making sure that she has that safety net until her last breath. When I think about going to vote, I think about my sons and making sure that they go to quality schools, making sure that we can enact all of the legislation that is possible so that one day I don't get that call that my sons have been hurt or killed or had some untoward interaction with the police. When I go to vote, I think about my wife and making sure that as a woman, she has the control over her body and over her life, just like any man does. When I go to vote, I think about all of the people in my life that I love so dearly and making sure that they are in communities that are healthy, in communities that will allow them to live the American dream. So if you don't think about yourself, if you don't believe that you are worthy enough to go out and vote, at least think about the folks in your life who are. And that's what's really important. What I am committed to doing, and Antoine, I know you are committed to doing, is making sure that we go out and we're talking to the brothers about the importance of voting and what that means and what it means to their communities and what it means as the men in our families and the impact that it could have. I think if we start to think about it in that way, I think we'll start to see some of the changes. I know many of us feel left out as if nobody's fighting for us. But that is not the case. We got a lot of good people who want the best. And for us to change the communities that we're in, got to change the leadership.
Jamie, sticking with the theme of the 2020 election cycle, some people questioned my pre-election analysis on CBS when I said this would be a gut check election for the country, because for the first time in our history, 32 million eligible Latino voters, 30 million registered eligible African American voters. We know history teaches us that every time we've had major change in this country, it's been because of young people, Black people, and brown people. Well, this election cycle has been no difference. The only difference is we did not have as strong as Democrats. We did not perform as well with Latino voters. However, AAPI voters, Black voters, and young voters really outdid themselves in this election. Going forward, how do we bring along Latino voters who continue to be the fastest growing voting bloc in this country, but also keeping engaged those young voters, those AAPI voters, in particular those Black voters? How do we keep them engaged and involved now ahead of the consequential midterms of 2022?
Well, Antoine, the thing that we have to do is, when I was a teacher, I had this concept in my class that the most powerful way to persuade somebody on anything is to show and not tell. That means our actions mean a whole lot more than our words. There are a lot of folks who feel as though the words of politicians and political leaders are empty and that they won't be persuaded until they actually see something that is tangible, that has an impact on their lives or the lives of the people in their community. And so we got to go into these communities and we have to do it on a consistent basis. I believe that in the Democratic Party in particular, that we have to transform ourselves from a political organization to a community-based organization that is working on a day-to-day basis to impact the lives of people, that we are showing people what our values are and not just telling it to them. So when we talk in the Latino community, we talk about immigration and we talk about immigration reform, that we're actually showing people that we value them and we value their lives and the value and the lives of their children and their kids. That we're looking at path to citizenship, that we're looking at the inequities that we see that community particularly faces, and that we're going to treat them in the manner that we treat our own families, and that's really important. And so that's how I want to fundamentally see what I'm going to do in my party, the Democratic Party, in order to make sure that those communities understand us. More and more we find that particularly younger voters are less aligned to political organizations and more aligned to what the values are of those organizations. What are the things they are actually doing in order to have an impact, a positive impact on the world and on the issues that are important to them, from climate change to education, student loan reform. All of these other things are really, really important. Well, again, it's not good enough to give lip service. We actually have to do things, tangible things, to show that we're fighting for improvements in those spaces. And I think if we then take that message and go into those communities, I think we strengthen the relationships and we give them faith that we're doing something different.
Jamie, I don't want to scare anybody on who may be watching us, but here's what you and I both know. In 2021, Virginia and New Jersey will have statewide races, including governor's races. 2022 arguably will be even more consequential than the 20 and the 2018 election cycles. You have Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, governor's races, Florida, Georgia, Arizona, Texas, New York. There's so many states on top of all those U.S. Senate seats, South Carolina to the back too. Can you, in your own words, maybe put some meat on the bone about how important the 2022 midterms will be, not just for Democrats, not just for Republicans, but for the American experiment?
Yeah, 2022 is going to be a crucial year. We already know of the angst and the frustration and the disaster coming out of 2020, the impact that it has had on this generation and future generations. We still don't understand. 2021 has already started out with fireworks in terms of all of the things and the machinations that are going on. 2022 will really dictate what happens in this next decade. What type of leadership will we have in Washington, D.C., trying to correct the issues of these past 2 years, and at the same time trying to build and set a foundation for our future? We will have redistricting that takes place starting this year, where lines will be drawn. In 2022, as Antoine mentioned, we'll have a number of gubernatorial races and Senate races. The control of the House of Representatives will all be in play. And so it is so important. If you don't like the direction this country is going in, but you have hope because of the new leadership that is coming in, then you need to make sure you finish the job. Give that new leadership the votes that they need in order to get things done to improve the lives of people. And that's really, really important. We can't have a letdown. Let's remember, history is a great teacher. We just got to make sure that we don't forget it. We know what happened in 2008. We got Barack Obama into the White House, had control of the House and the Senate. Well, in 2010, we all got too comfortable. We all thought that things were fine and settled, and so we didn't turn out and vote. And as a result, then that dynamic changed. We lost the House, lost the Senate, and Barack Obama, in essence, was stopped from making any further progress. Well, that same potential is here for 2022. What will we do? Will we say, oh, our job was done in 2020 and now we can just rest? No, we can never rest because we see what happens on the other side. These, as Dr. King said in his letter from a Birmingham jail, he said, we will repent in this generation not merely for the hateful words and actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people. Well, the good people in this country can no longer be silent in the face of injustice and inequality. That means every election we need to turn out in force to make sure that the good people are the ones that are winning these seats and therefore dictating and creating the construct of which we all live. That's the charge that we all have in 2022. We can't let up. You got to keep pushing. We got to keep pressing. We got to keep bringing new leadership to bear in the in Washington D.C., but also on a local level.
Jamie, speaking of Washington D.C., breaking news: Democrats, along with 10 Republicans, for the first time in history, impeach a sitting president twice. You and I and everyone around us observed some of the activity that happened in D.C. The domestic terrorists did what they did. You worked in the Capitol as a former staffer, someone who worked for the highest ranking African American member of Congress. Talk about why what happened just days ago was so pivotal to our nation's history and what it actually means, because it's something nobody's ever seen before. I mean, it's tougher to get into a USC football game and even some high schools in America than it was for people, these domestic terrorists who took over the Capitol and were just steps away from those who are third, fourth, and fifth in line to the presidency. Can you, in your own words, put some sauce on what that means so we can digest it?
Antoine, watching what happened last Wednesday was gut-wrenching to me. I spent many of my early years as a staffer on the floor of the House of Representatives. I'm one of those people who still gets goosebumps when I go to Washington, D.C. and see that dome lit up, because I understand what it represents. It represents the hope of America, the hope that we can all live free, that we can all have the American dream and provide for our families and our communities. And to see what happened and to know that the President of the United States actually lit the match to allow that powder keg to blow up. I never thought that I would see something like that in my lifetime. But what is even more galling right now is to see people still stand on the floor of the House of Representatives, to stand on the floor of the United States Senate, and uphold the president in those actions, even claim he did nothing wrong. When you take an oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States from all threats, foreign and domestic, your oath, your word, putting your hand on that Bible has to mean something. Something much more than, a political party or some candidate who can only serve 8 years in the White House. It has to mean something. Our democracy right now is teetering on the edge. And the question is, who's going to draw it back? Who's going to pull it back from that disaster? And more, we see that there's some members who really don't care. Now, I'm heartened to see that, there were 10 Republicans who voted with the Democrats in terms of that impeachment, but it should have been much more. These are people who love to roll, you have a flag behind me, who love to say that they're such patriots. Patriots for what? What are you fighting for? Because you sure as heck have been fighting for America if you are okay with what happened. And this is the thing. Folks are talking about healing and all. Part of this is not just there needs to be accountability and an understanding of precedence. The accountability is if you do something wrong, there are consequences for doing that wrong. And Donald Trump has never understood that. I think from a kid, he never understood that there are consequences when he couldn't have his way. Well, now he is the most powerful man on the face of this planet, and we need to, in a unified voice, let him know that there are consequences for bad actions, even when you're president of the United States. But secondarily, what is important is that we have to understand that we are setting a precedent. Because if inspiring a mob is not enough for impeachment, then what is? So if that happens with another president, is that okay? Because then I would expect these same Republicans who did not vote for impeachment this time to then not vote for impeachment the next time. But what if the mob is more successful the next time and they actually kill additional people? There are 5 people who lost their lives that day. But even more, where does it stop? We got to do a better job of protecting this democracy. We got to do a better job of holding people accountable for their actions, regardless of their positions. You can be a janitor, you could be a Capitol Police officer, you can be a member of Congress, or you could have been a member of that mob. But if you did something in order to inspire what happened, then you need to be held accountable for it. And I hope, the U.S. Senate will make sure folks are held accountable for those actions.
Jamie, you know what makes my grits boil over more than anything else about all of this? We see people trying to compare this to Black Lives Matter. I'm 35, you're in your 40s, we're both Black, we both come from rural South Carolina, 30 minutes apart. We both know the history of protesting. Protesting is in our DNA. Not one time in our history have we ever advocated for violence and so forth. Even while we were protesting, it was being done to us. It was never been something we advocated for. Yet we have elected officials and others trying to make the comparison to agitators in the Black Lives Matter movement to these domestic terrorists. The scary part for me, Jamie, is the fact that I don't know if these people are going away just because Trump is going away. And so how we adjust to what could be a new norm, I don't know. But here's what I know. When we govern, we have a chance to make changes. And next week, this time, the President of the United States will be a man from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I call him Scrap Joe from Scranton. A Black woman for the first time in our history from Oakland, California, by the name of Kamala Harris. They will have a lot of work to do on the second they take office. You know, we always measure the temperature and tone of a administration by the first 100 days. From your perspective, what are some of the 50,000-foot things you are looking for in the first 100 days of the incoming administration?
Yeah. Well, Antoine, this is such a great question because you're right. This is the thing. These people we see now, this ain't new. These people have always been lurking in the shadows. It was just this president that brought them out into the light and emboldened them. And it's the rubber stamps in Congress that emboldened him in order to do it and allowed him to move forward and do that. And so part of what I expect is I believe that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will build back better. Will bring us back together. And for some people, listen, there's just some people you pray for and you just have to move forward because you're never going to convince them. They're always going to have that hatred in their heart. And you just pray for them. But for the other of us who actually want to do something positive, who want to be in a community, in diverse communities together, there's so much that needs to be done. I hope that Joe Biden will work on student loan debt. That is something that is so crucial for this next generation. They are being saddled with, hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And no other generation has had to have such a burden to start off their lives. I hope he tackles the issue of climate change. We got one planet, and if we don't treat it right, then we condemn the lives of future generations to come. So we need to tackle that issue. We need to tackle the environmental justice issues that so many African Americans have in their communities. We need to look at healthcare. We've seen a rash of rural hospitals to close over the past decade or so. We need to figure out how we address that and make sure that healthcare is available to all. Housing is such an issue right now. So many people who have lost their jobs and now they're on the verge of losing their homes and not having places to stay. There's so much that we can do and that we have to do in this next. We got to tackle COVID. We got to make sure that we get vaccines out there for everybody. Is crucial and is so important that we do that. And folks, listen, I know there are a lot of people out there that are a little skeptical about the vaccine. Listen, y'all. And I told my grandma this the other day. She said, well, I don't know what's in that thing. I said, well, you don't know what's in a flu shot either, but you take it. And folks, let's take this thing because we do know this. If you have any uncertainty, understand this as certain, that the COVID virus, the coronavirus right now, left unchecked, is disproportionately killing Black folks. Point blank, period. So you do know that. We got to do everything that we possibly can to make sure that we protect our loved ones. I will take the shot because I want to make sure that I can protect my grandma because I want to see her. I want her grandboys to be able to see her and interact with her. I lost an aunt this summer, and nobody in our family, because she had COVID, could hold her hand as she passed away from this earth. That's not who we are as a people. So we got to do everything that we can in order to address this. Because one of the things we learned in the Bible, faith without works is dead. Yes, we're going to pray about it. But the Lord gave us these great brains to come up with things in order to really address some of the issues that we will find in life. So we got to make sure that we're utilizing those as well. And so, there's a lot to be done. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and all of us got a lot of work. We got to roll up our sleeves. But once we do the work, Antoine, we also got to make sure we let the people know that we've done it. Absolutely. And it's not good enough just to do it. It's important that we also let people know that we have actually done the work and we kept the promises that we made to them.
Jaime, 50 years of the Congressional Black Caucus this year. Joyce Beatty is the chair, our good friend. Although we celebrate 50 years, this will be a 50-year celebration without John Lewis, without Elijah Cummings. We oftentimes refer to the CBC as the conscience of the Congress. I said to someone earlier today, a reporter, that Jim Clyburn is probably the cement or the glue that holds the CBC together. Can you share with this audience who may not understand the significance of the CBC, the record number of CBC members this year in the United States Congress, talk about the importance of the Congressional Black Caucus?
Folks should understand how powerful the CBC is and how powerful a force. Right now, they represent almost a quarter of the members of the House Democratic Caucus. We now hold the chairman of the Education and Workforce Committee, the chairman of Homeland Security, chairman of the Financial Services Committee, the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Who am I missing, Antoine? Did I get them all? The chairman of the Science Committee. Those are all Congressional Black Caucus members. You got 2 of the top 5 members of leadership. Majority Whip Jim Clyburn, number 3. Hakeem Jeffries, number 5. In terms of the leadership of the House. We now have 2 African Americans, 3 African Americans in the Senate, 2 Democrats, African American Democrats in the United States Senate when Raphael Warnock joins a little later on this month. in terms of the height of our power and representation, and for the first time ever, we have an African American vice president of the United States who is also a member of the Congressional Black Caucus. Many times folks say, well, I don't know what the CBC does. Well, I can tell you what, the CBC does a whole lot. And you may not see a bill, but I can tell you there's a whole lot that the CBC stops from happening as well, from cuts to programs that are instrumental for our communities. I can tell you many times that people have tried to cut LIHEAP, which is giving assistance to people, energy assistance for folks. I know growing up, my grandma on many occasions when my grandfather lost his job would have to go down to CCMO and apply for a grant in order to keep our lights on during the winter. Well, the CBC stands in the door and keeps those programs alive from being cut and slashed, particularly even in times when the Democrats are in the minority. The food stamp program, making sure that the needed resources are there. And so the CBC does a lot in terms of on offense, but they do almost as much on defense to keep that safety net there to protect and defend the people in our communities. And so they really are the conscience of the Congress. And we need them so much more in these dark times.
Jamie, before I let you go, I'm going to ask you about your future. We've heard all the things you've been able to accomplish, and we're so proud of you. And I just thank you for spreading your strong, wide shoulders to let me sit on. But there's obviously a future for Jaime Harrison. What does that look like?
Well, Antoine, there are moments when I wonder about the same thing, man. Listen, I've been very clear coming out of this election. I was disappointed that I did not win and was able to represent my home, my beloved state of South Carolina in the U.S. Senate. But, I'm a firm believer that when one door closes, the Lord opens up many others. And so, I've expressed my interest to President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris that if they want me to be the next chair of the DNC, that I'd be happy to serve in that capacity or any capacity. In essence, my friends, what I want is to just do better, to make sure that we can do things that are better for our community. And so I'm willing to do whatever role that takes. It can be in the private sector, it can be in the public sector, it can be in a role in a political office. It doesn't matter. I just want to continue to pay back forward all of the blessings that I've been able to get in life, and the things that so many people have invested in me. I feel obligated to pay that back. And so we will see. The decision on the DNC will be announced probably in the next day or so. And so, if they do call my number, I'd be happy to take on that charge, pushing forward into 2022.
So is it safe to say, in front of the AME Church and everybody listening, that if offered, Jaime Harrison will be happy to serve as the next leader of the Democratic National Committee?
Yes, it is safe to say I would be happy to serve. So everybody, I know y'all are a praying family. So y'all put in those prayers for me and see if we can make this happen.
Jaime, thank you for your friendship.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for all you do. And I can't wait for January 20th, but also January 21st, because I firmly believe with my AME heart that Jaime Harrison, the round-headed boy from Orangeburg, South Carolina, will make his way to be the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. Thank you. God bless, Jaime.
Thank you. God bless you too. And God bless all of you listening today.
And for all of you who are listening, thank you so much for tuning in to join us on this historic Wednesday all across this country, all across this world. We can't thank you enough. These dialogues are so important, and we try to have some of the most interesting voices of our day to be on these dialogues. And as I oftentimes say, if it is to be, it's up to the AMEs. But in 2021, I'm going to say, I was glad when they said unto me, let's join the Christian Recorder and those good old AMEs. Our next dialogue will be Friday between Bishop Jackson and my good friend John Thomas III discussing the Georgia runoffs. That'll be at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please support the Christian Recorder by buying a subscription for $36 a year. That's just a few less stops to McDonald's during the week. You can do that at www.thechristianrecorder.com. Please support the AME Church Publishing House for your church and school worship needs. Visit www.amepublishing.com. We want to thank our sponsors, Xanders for Bishop 2021 and Beeman for Bishop 2021. Thank you all, and we'll have closing remarks here very, very shortly.
I guess I'm giving closing remarks. Thank you all both for being here with us. And today has been a very special day. We wanted to set this year off right. And Chair Harrison, we look forward to coming to hear from you soon again with what you'll do with the party. Thank you, Brother Stephen, as always. God bless you all. And we look forward to seeing you and hearing from you all next time. But don't forget, tune in on Friday when we'll talk about the Georgia Senate runoff. God bless you all. Take care. See y'all next time.
Thank you.
God bless.